Good guys, and welcome back to another video. I'm out here and I'm gonna test the brand new firmware update for the Mini 4 Pro and the new DJI Fly app for the RC2 controller. And there's one more feature I want to test more than others, and something I've had an awful experience with in the past, which is active track. So for this test I'm gonna do 3 different trails. We're gonna start here with this open landscape, which is gonna be easy for the Mini 4 Pro. Then we're gonna head over to some dense forest, which will be a little bit more challenging, I guess. And last but not least, a pretty overgrown forest trail with a lot of small branches, which has been the reason for a lot of my crashes with the Mini 4 Pro. And these branches are known to be sort of invisible for the Mini 4 Pro, so it's going to be interesting to check that later on. But the first test here is just going to be a normal walk. I'm going to walk along those rocks here, which is giving me some of that uneven terrain as well, instead of walking in a straight line, which is something that the Mini 4 Pro can handle pretty well. I wanted to add this open landscape, but also make it a little bit challenging to see if or how the pulsing of the Mini 4 Pro is when I have different speeds and when the environment is different in height as well. So let's grab the Mini 4 Pro, let's get this beauty up into the air. And I'm going to highlight myself by dragging a box here, and we're going to choose active track, and we're going to keep it to manual because I want that backtrack. And now we also have the adjustments on the left side here at the bottom, where we can choose which direction it should go from and to. There has been some updates since the last time I did these tracking shots, and like I said, when I did my test in Hawaii, my experience was awful, but hopefully this time around it's going to be much better. I can also see that it seems to keep a pretty consistent height and speed and movement, which is pretty interesting compared to my previous test, which was a pretty long time ago, but I have been using active track in between. But I, basically haven't paid attention to it, or I've used 4K 60 FPS and slow down the footage, which smoothens everything out a bit. So let's see how it goes when we are walking uphill here. It actually looks pretty decent. It actually looks pretty good. Let's walk a little bit more up here, change the direction, see how it follows. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, let's do a spin to the front now, like that, and see how that goes. And we can pull it a little bit closer. Should be straight in front of me now, eventually, I guess, or not. So I'm actually need to wait maybe, or pull it down a little bit. Like that. So let's see if I turn around now. It should go to the front, right? Because I've set it to track from the front. And it does. But I wonder how this will do in a more dense location, a more dense forest trail, and if that is something that the Mini 4 Pro can handle. So let's head over to the next location. Let's find out if the Mini 4 Pro has actually received an upgrade when it comes to active track from the previous testing that I've done, and if it has fixed the issues that I have been complaining about for almost 10 months now. So moving over to the second test here, and for this next trail we have a light dense forest trail, which should be an easy job for the Mini 4 Pro, since there's not really many challenging obstacles here, so this should be pretty straightforward. I also want to add one thing though, and that is that I only had my ND64 filter with me, so I flew without any filters. That's the reason basically why you see some of these lens flares. But for the tracking I'm using manual, and we also have set the drone to to follow me from behind, which you can see here on the left bottom corner. And if we take a look at the orange and red curves here that appears on the screen, this is basically the indications of how close the drone is to certain objects and on which side the objects are located. So that's basically why you see these half circle lines in two different colors. But for a trail like this, I would say, you know, the Mini 4 Pro nailed it, and so far so good. But what if we go deeper into the forest? Will the Mini 4 Pro be able to follow and track me properly with some tight turns, overgrown trails, and the so-called invisible branches? So for this test, I started out with the Mini 4 Pro tracking my wife, because obviously it wants to track her instead of me, which you might have seen in one of my earlier videos where I actually spent quite some time trying to figure this out, but it just didn't want to lock on. As we get deeper into the forest here and deeper into the overgrown areas, these sensors are really going off here, and we mostly see red indicators, which means that the obstacles are pretty close. But it actually managed to push through the first section here without any issues, so I'm pretty impressed with that actually. And this is something that I couldn't expect the Mini 4 Pro to do in the past. And I also want to say that when you're tracking yourself in scenarios like this, it's important to set the obstacle avoidance sensors to bypass and keep the tracking to normal. You don't want to go with the nifty, because the drone will try to do some crazy stuff which you might not approve of. So on a trail like this, normal is the best way to go. And just like the second test, I also set the drone to follow me from behind, and that's more of a personal safety reason, I would say. So when the drone is getting really close to obstacles and you see these red indicators, there's also a higher chance of the drone actually pulsing back and forth a few times, especially when you're on a hike like this where nothing is consistent. And if you have the drone tracking you from the front, well, you don't want this to be in your face. So if the trail is heavily dense, I would actually recommend having the drone tracking you from behind. Now, first, after 7 minutes of tracking through a pretty narrow trail, we had our first dropout. So here I was going straight, then hard right, and then down. And as I went behind the tree here, the Mini 4 Pro lost me. Maybe it would have kept up if I went a little bit faster or if I were tracking my wife, but I think it did a pretty good job so far. Now for the next 5 minutes it got even more challenging, but the Mini 4 Pro went through the entire last part of the trail without any issues. So comparing my active track experience now and the one that I had 10 months ago, it's a whole different world. The active track has gotten so much better, and I can't wait to take this back to something a little more tropical. What's strange though is that there has been no indication of active track being fixed in the update notes, and there hasn't been for a long time, I guess, only bug fixes. But obviously there has been some improvements to the active track, because active track has never been this good, especially for me when I'm out doing my normal activities, normal hikes, normal stuff with the Mini 4 Pro. Now, as for the other features and the overall flight experience, there's not much to report. Everything is working as it should, and the DJI Mini 4 Pro is still what I consider the best travel drone that money can buy. But what I find interesting is that over the past few months, DJI has been pushing out new updates after updates to fix all these bugs and issues, and it's just amazing to see how fast they come up with a fix for the issues that we have with these drones. So I really do appreciate that. So I'm really impressed with the new firmware. Even though it didn't bring any new features, it just shows that DJI is still highly dedicated to fix everything to make us customers happy. And I also want to bring some happiness around the mini drones, so make sure to grab my free Mini 3 Pro cheat sheets down below, and the majority of the settings and tips and tricks on those cheat sheets will apply to the Mini 4 Pro as well. Talking about Mini 4 Pro cheat sheets, I will also have some available pretty soon, which is going to be completely free. Now, if you also want the best of the best custom color grading for your Mini 4 Pro, I do suggest checking out my Signature LUTs, which is now on 40% off. You can learn more about these down in the description below. These are basically enhancement LUTs with a unique color pattern compared to all of the LUTs you see online. So definitely worth checking out if you want something that stands out and looks better. So that's going to be everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Active Track is definitely my new favorite feature, and this combined with the waypoints, man, the Mini 4 Pro is amazing.